Imagine the blistering heat of a U.S. Army boot camp where a fierce young woman, tears streaming down her face, endures the ultimate degradation, her head shaved bald by smirking soldiers determined to crush her American spirit. But in a heartbeat, a four-star general charges in, revealing a secret that flips the script on every bully there. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button and show some love to her. The Georgia's sun in late June 2025 was merciless, a furnace that turned the red clay parade field at Fort Moore, formerly Fort Benning, into a shimmering haze. Heat waves rose from the asphalt like spirits escaping the earth. Hundreds of recruits stood in rigid formation, their multicam uniforms dark with sweat, boots polished to a mirror shine despite the dust. At the center of this disciplined sea stood Staff Sergeant Lenox Thorne, 28 years old, 5'7", 132 pounds of coiled muscle and quiet fury. Her personnel file, accessible to anyone with the right clearance, listed her as a recent transfer from the 82nd Airborne Division, Specialty Logistics and Supply Chain Management. That file was fiction, a meticulously constructed legend. Lenox had arrived 3 weeks earlier under the cover of night, her long dark braid tucked beneath a patrol cap. She had volunteered for this assignment, knowing full well what awaited women who dared enter certain units, still clinging to old-school machismo. The mission came straight from the office of the Inspector General, channeled through JSOC channels that very few people knew existed. Reports had trickled up the chain. Systematic hazing escalating into criminal behavior, weapons and sensitive equipment disappearing from locked arms rooms, money moving in ways that suggested cartel involvement. Someone inside needed to become the perfect target, draw the predators into the open, record everything. That someone was Lenox Thorne, call sign Phantom, already a legend in classified circles. She had not spoken much since arrival. When she did, her voice carried the soft drawl of Eastern Tennessee, polite but unyielding. The other soldiers tested her immediately, push-ups until her arms shook, extra ruck marches when the platoon was dismissed, comments about her braid, her hips, her place. She absorbed it all without flinching, eyes always forward, always scanning. She was building the profile they expected, tough enough to endure, fragile enough to break. On this particular Monday morning, the breaking was scheduled. First Sergeant Raymond Milin, 42, broad-shouldered, face permanently reddened by years in the sun and too much bourbon on weekends, had orchestrated the ritual for years. It was never officially sanctioned, of course. It was tradition. New soldiers, especially women, especially ones who looked like they might actually succeed, were given the welcome haircut. The purpose was simple. Strip away civilian vanity, humble them before the unit, remind them who held power. Milin told himself it built character. Deep down, he knew it was about control. Corporals Vance Hargrove, Kenji Matsuda, and Tyler Penn were his chosen instruments. All three were big. All three had reputations for enjoying the work a little too much. They had been watching Lenox since day one. The braid especially offended them. It was too feminine, too defiant. At 0937 hours, after the morning physical training session, but before the first classroom block, Milin gave the nod. The platoon guide called the formation to attention, then dismissed everyone except the new arrival. Lenox remained at parade, rest in the center of the field, alone now under hundreds of eyes. Vance approached first, electric clippers in his right hand, the cord trailing like a leash. Matsuda and Penn flanked her, gloved hands ready. The rest of the unit formed a loose semicircle, some smirking, some looking away in discomfort, most silent. Attention! Milin barked from 30 yards away. This here is how we welcome new blood. Thorne, you will submit. You will thank us afterward. Understood. Lennox's voice was calm, almost conversational. Understood, First Sergeant. Vance stepped forward. On your knees, Sergeant. She lowered herself slowly, knees hitting the hot asphalt. The pain was immediate, sharp, but she ignored it. Vance grabbed the braid at the base, yanking her head back slightly. Such pretty hair, he said, loud enough for the whole field to hear. Shame to waste it. The clippers buzzed to life, a harsh insect drone. He pressed them against the nape of her neck and drew upward in one long, deliberate stroke. A thick rope of dark hair fell away, landing in a heap beside her right boot. The crowd gasped, then murmured. Another pass, then another. The braid was gone in less than 90 seconds. What remained was a rough, uneven strip down the center of her scalp. Like a reverse mohawk, the rest of her head buzzed nearly to skin. Tears welled in Lennox's eyes. Not from pain, not from humiliation, but from the sheer effort of holding back the rage that wanted to explode. She had been trained to endure torture, to maintain cover under fire. This was different. This was personal. Vance stepped back, admiring his work. Matsuda and Penn held her shoulders, keeping her in place. "Say thank you," Penn demanded. Lennox swallowed once. "Thank you, Corporal." Milin smiled, satisfied. Dismissed. But before anyone could move, a new sound cut through the morning air. The deep growl of a powerful engine, tires biting gravel. A black Suburban with tinted windows skidded to a stop at the edge of the field. The driver's door flew open. General Harlan Thorpe, United States Army, for stars gleaming on his shoulders, stepped out. 61 years old, 6'2", still built like the linebacker he had been at West Point. His face was a storm cloud. He strode across the field with the kind of purpose that made sergeants straighten spines they didn't know could straighten further. The formation froze. Milin saluted sharply. "Attention!" Thorpe did not return the salute. He walked straight to Lennox, who remained kneeling, head bowed, hair scattered around her like black confetti. He stopped directly in front of her, boots inches from her knees. "Stand up, Colonel," he said quietly. The word landed like a grenade. "Colonel." Gasps. Whispers. Someone in the back actually said, "What the fuck?" Lennox rose slowly, eyes meeting Thorpe's. For the first time since she had arrived, she allowed herself a small, private smile. Thorpe turned to face the stunned unit. His voice carried without effort, the voice of a man who had commanded divisions in combat. "This soldier," he said, "outranks every single one of you. Lieutenant Colonel Lenox Thorne, Special Operations Command, currently assigned to the Department of the Army Inspector General. She has been operating undercover in this unit for the past 21 days. Everything that has happened here this morning has been recorded. Every word, every action, every laugh." Milin went pale. Vance's smirk vanished. Matsuda released Lennox's shoulder as if it burned. Thorpe continued. "First Sergeant Milin, Corporals Hargrove, Matsuda, and Penn, you are under arrest for violation of Article 93, cruelty and maltreatment. Article 134, General Article for conduct prejudicial to good order and discipline, and additional charges pending investigation into conspiracy to commit larceny of government property." Military police vehicles rolled onto the field from two directions. Handcuffs clicked. Vance tried to bolt. A CID agent tackled him before he made 5 steps. Milin stood motionless, eyes glassy. Lennox spoke for the first time since the clipper stopped. "General, permission to brief the formation." Thorpe nodded once. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tears still drying on her cheeks. "I came here to find out who was stealing weapons and selling them to domestic buyers. I found more than that. I found a network that reaches outside this post into organized crime. I also found men who believe breaking someone down makes them stronger. They were wrong." She looked directly at the recruits who had watched in silence. "Some of you laughed. Some of you looked away. Some of you wanted to intervene, but didn't. Remember this day. The Army is not about who can hurt the most. It's about who can stand when everything wants to break you." Thorpe placed a hand on her shoulder. Colonel Thorne's promotion to Lieutenant Colonel was effective 6 months ago, following her successful neutralization of a high-value target in the Sahel region. Her cover rank was maintained for operational necessity. Effective immediately, she resumes her true rank. The field was silent except for the low murmur of wind and the distant sound of a helicopter. Then someone started clapping, one recruit, then another. Within moments, the entire formation was applauding, not out of obligation, but out of awe. Lenox Thorne, bald head shining in the sun, stood taller than she ever had. But the story was far from over. That afternoon, in a windowless room at the Fort Moore CID office, Lenox sat across from Milin. The first sergeant was in orange coveralls now, wrists cuffed to the table. His arrogance had evaporated. "You want to talk?" Lenox asked. Milin stared at the table. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one. But before that happens, I want you to know something. I know about the shipment that left here 3 weeks ago. I know about the contact in Atlanta. I know about the money that went to your offshore account. And I know about the name Marcus Thorne." Milin's head snapped up. "What about him?" Lenox leaned forward. "You served with him in 1991. Desert Storm. You were a private. He was your platoon sergeant. He wrote you up for cowardice under fire. That write-up disappeared. You made sure of that, didn't you?" Milin said nothing. And 15 years later, when Marcus was stateside on recruiting duty, someone tried to kill him. Car bomb. Official reports said it was a training accident. Shrapnel in his leg. But we both know it wasn't an accident. It was revenge. Milin's jaw clenched. Lenox continued. "The people who planted that bomb are the same people you've been selling weapons to. The same people who poisoned my mother when I was 3 days old. They wanted to hurt Marcus. They succeeded, but they didn't kill him. And they didn't kill me." Milin finally spoke. "You have no proof." "I have everything," Lenox said, "and you're going to give me the rest." The interrogation lasted 7 hours. By the end, Milin had named names, dates, routes. The network was larger than anyone had suspected. Cartel connections stretching from Mexico through Texas into Georgia and up the East Coast. Weapons intended for training exercises were rerouted to street gangs and private militias. Money flowed back in cryptocurrency. And at the center of it all was a figure no one had expected, a retired 2-star general living in Virginia, pulling strings from his golf course mansion. Lenox didn't sleep that night. She sat in her temporary quarters, head still buzzing from the clippers, fingers tracing the short stubble. She thought of her father. Marcus had died 2 years earlier, cancer finally claiming what war could not. He had never known the full truth about her mother's death. Lenox had promised herself she would find it. The next morning, she was on a Black Hawk to Atlanta. A joint task force had been assembled overnight. FBI, ATF, DEA, and a small contingent of JSOC operators who had worked with her before. They raided 3 locations simultaneously. At the main warehouse near the port, Lenox went in first, night vision goggles down, M4 up. She moved like smoke through the stacks of crates. When the shooting started, she was the calm center of the storm. They found Captain Elias Reed in a locked room on the 2nd floor. Elias, the man she had loved in Iraq, the man who had disappeared during an operation in Mosul 7 years earlier. Presumed dead. She had mourned him. She had carried his dog tags in her ruck ever since. He was thinner, bearded, eyes hollow. When he saw her, he froze. "Lenox." She lowered her weapon. "Elias." He started a step forward. She raised a hand. "Don't." He stopped. "They told me you were dead. They told me the same about you." Silence stretched between them, heavy with years of grief and betrayal. Elias spoke first. "I didn't have a choice. They had my sister. They said if I cooperated, she'd live. I gave them information, just enough to keep her alive. I never thought." "You sold weapons to people who kill Americans," Lenox said quietly. "I know." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she keyed her radio. "Objective secure. 1 HVT in custody." Elias didn't resist when the agents cuffed him. As they led him away, he looked back once. "I am sorry, Lenox." She didn't answer. The raid yielded enough evidence to dismantle the entire network. Arrests followed across 5 states. The retired general was taken into custody at 0600 the next morning, still in his bathrobe. The weapons were recovered. The money trail was frozen. And somewhere in a classified archive, a file on the death of Maria Thorne was reopened. Toxicology reports, long buried, confirmed poisoning. The men responsible were already in custody. Lenox returned to Fort Moore 1 week later. The unit had changed. The smirks were gone. The recruits looked at her with something close to reverence. She addressed them one final time before transferring out. "I didn't come here to be a victim," she said. "I came here to show you that strength isn't about breaking someone else. It's about refusing to be broken. You have that power. Use it wisely. She touched her scalp, now beginning to show the first hint of regrowth. This, she said, this is nothing. This is hair. What matters is what you do with the days you're given. She walked off the field to applause that lasted nearly 2 minutes. 6 months later, on a cold December morning in Arlington National Cemetery, Lenox stood at her father's grave. Her hair had grown back to chin length, dark waves framing a face that had seen too much but refused to bend. General Thorpe stood beside her, no longer hiding the truth. He had confessed, quietly, that he was her biological father, a brief affair during a time when Marcus was deployed and Maria was lonely. Marcus had known. He had raised Lenox as his own anyway. Love, he had said, is a choice. Thorpe placed a hand on her shoulder. He'd be proud. I know, Lenox said. She knelt, placed a single dog tag on the headstone, Elias's. A gesture of forgiveness she wasn't sure she fully felt, but one she knew was necessary. Then she stood, saluted, and walked away. Years passed. Lenox Thorne rose through the ranks, eventually becoming one of the first female 3-star generals in Army history. She founded the Thorne Resilience Foundation, dedicated to supporting women in uniform who had survived hazing, assault, or betrayal. She testified before Congress. She mentored cadets at West Point. She never forgot the day the clippers touched her scalp. And every year, on the anniversary of that morning, she shaved her head completely. Not out of shame, but out of remembrance. A private ritual, shared only with those she trusted most. Because some scars, she learned, become your greatest strength. Drop a comment below. From which part of the country are you watching this video?